All right, ladies and gentlemen and graphic designers, we're going to do part 2 of the collage. We're really going to get started this time. And one time I had this kid named Stevie, and he said to me, hey, starting with a low quality image is dumb. And Stevie was right. Starting with a low quality image is done. In your notes, you should have a set of notes in your notebook that says at the top collage, right at the top of that thing, collage, and answer this question. What bad thing will happen if you start with a low quality image? Write that down. But if you don't know, I'm going to tell you. So here's what's going to happen. So this is what happened one time. One kid went like this. He went file, open. Instead of going file new, like I said, he just went file, open, and he went into his assets folder, and he got a picture over here. And it happened that he didn't even bother to get high quality images. He got a really low quality image, and he said, oh, I like this. I'm going to use this as my background. And he said, I'm going to place some pictures on there. And he said, file. And he said place, and he looked around and was like, oh, I love this Indian paintbrush picture, and he added it to it, and like, oh, I'm going to shrink this thing down, and I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to shrink it down some more, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and I'm going to hit enter to finish that. I'm going to add a nice drop shadow to it, and I'm going to play around with the drop shadow, make it look really nice. And it was awesome, and he kept doing this, adding and placing pictures, and he was like done with the collage. And I came over to grade it, and I'm like, okay, let's take a look at it. And I went like this. I went image, and I went to image size, and it's like 20. It's supposed to be 300. And I'm like, man, what's going on here? And then I zoom in, and look, all those really good pictures. This is like a really high quality picture, but when you place it on this crummy picture, it ruins the quality of it. So don't do that. Instead, we're going to do like we said yesterday. We're going to go file new. We're going to make it 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5, 300 CMYK, and so on and so forth. Okay. The next thing I want to do is let's take a look at some examples of some collages that students have done in the past. So here's kind of an example of a composite. Okay, that looks good. Here's a simple one. Ours actually have to be a little bit more complex than this. There's a few more things. But at any rate, so this person took pictures and placed them on a simple background. So those are some good examples of student work. Okay. So pitfalls. I already showed you one of the main pitfalls is starting off with a bad quality image as your background. Another general pitfall is getting low quality images off the internet. You're going to lose points on that. So make sure every image that you get is good quality. If you don't know how to double check that, ask me and I will show you individually. Okay, so now let's get started with our actual project here. Okay, so we can close this one. We can close this one. We can do this one. I'm going to actually get rid of this so I don't get stuck with it here. Okay, so let's go file, open. I'm going to open this project that I've opened before. Okay, there's my collage. Okay, so I am going to get started with a background, but instead of opening the background, I'm going to open my high quality project I've started. If I go to image size, you can see that it's the right size. Okay, so I'm going to go file, place, and I'm going to find a nice background picture in here. And I'm going to choose this one right here, this big flower, and I'm going to rotate this thing first of all. Okay, make it like that. If I hit shift, it'll makes it easier to rotate it and get it straight. I'm just going to drag it right there. That looks about right. I'm going to hit enter. Oh, nope, I didn't get it. Press Control T, hit shift to constrain the proportions right there. Hit enter. We're good to go. Okay, so that's my background picture, and it's a little bit vibrant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a gradient in order to kind of soften it a little bit. So on top of it, I'm going to make a new layer on top of it. I'm going to go to my gradient tool, and I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to look around. You can add any of these pre-made gradients. If I wanted to change any of these colors, I could. So I clicked on that thing to get this. But I like it how it is. I'm going to click OK. And so I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag from the top down. You can drag it any direction you want. You can see that obviously covered things up a little bit too much. So if you want to, you can adjust the saturation. And then, so over here, if you look over here, I played around with this, did I say saturation? I changed the opacity. And then right here is the blending mode. And I'm going to click right here, and I'm just going to hit the up arrow. So again, I'm right here, and I clicked, and I'm hitting the up arrow to go through it. I kind of like color. Saturation's interesting. Hue's pretty nice. Divide. So you can go through and find all kinds of really interesting things, different ways to, pin light's actually pretty cool. But I think I'm going to go with hue. I'm going to go back down. Okay, and so there's that piece. So now I've got my background set up the way I want, and now I'm going to start placing pictures. So I'm going to go File, I'm going to go to Place, and I'm going to find my Indian paintbrush again, and hit Shift to constrain proportions. I'm going to shrink it down to the size that I want, and I'm going to hit Enter, and then I'm going to press Control T, and I'm going to rotate it the way I want. I'm going to probably rotate it like that a little bit. Actually, and I think I might shrink it down just a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, so now I'm going to go backwards. Okay, I'm going to keep it straight. We want to keep this straight. So I'm going to zoom in. And the reason I want to keep it straight is because I'm going to round the edges, and it's going to be easier to round the edges like this. Okay, so in order to round the edges, I'm going to go to my Shape Tools. I'm going to choose the rounded rectangle. And I already pre-selected 75 pixels, and I'm going to make sure that it's not, I don't want to draw a black shape or a colored shape. I want to make a path. So then I'm going to kind of click and drag what I want. Okay, that's the portion of the picture I want right there. And then I'm going to come over to my path, and I'm going to name this path. I'm going to call this 3 paintbrush, because that's the name of that flower. And I'm going to click OK. And I want to load this as a selection, so I'm going to load that thing as a selection. I'm going to come back to my layers. I'm going to make sure I'm on the correct layer, and then I'm going to crop that. Okay, so I've made a nice, soft, rounded edges on it, and I'm going to finish it up with an effect. I'm going to add a drop shadow, and let's take a look. So we're going to do the distance. We're going to do the size, something like that. Maybe make the distance spread. Yeah, something like that. So it stands out nicely. Let me double click on the hand. I click OK. So I'm going to double click on the hand so I can see the whole picture. And now I'm going to press Control T and transform. Now I'm going to give it the rotation I want after I've added the rounded rectangle. And I'm going to hit Enter to make those changes permanent. Okay, so this is the end of part 2. So make sure you're always going File, Save, making sure you save all the changes, and that's it for part 2. Go ahead and go on to part 3.